Welcome to the Holy Post. In a series of invitation-only, off-the-record lectures about his faith, technology billionaire Peter Thiel said that the Antichrist is trying to regulate technology and billionaires. Which raises the question, why do we always remake Christ in our image and the Antichrist in our enemies? Then Gen Z is making conservative Christianity more angry, more intolerant, and more illiberal. What's fueling the young adult interest in religious fundamentalism? Then counter-terrorism expert Elizabeth Neumann is back to discuss the rising political violence among progressives and why young adults seem to be more okay with political violence. She expects things to get worse before they get better. Also this week, the fishy origin of fingers. Quick update and announcement. Our next live show recording is coming in just a few weeks, featuring all 4 HOLYPOST media hosts. That's Phil Vischer, Caitlin Chess, Esau McCauley, and me. The show is October 25th in Lombard, Illinois, in the western suburbs of Chicago. Tickets are now on sale for the event, so if you want to meet us and participate in a live recording of the show, along with connecting with other Holy Posters, this is your chance. Go to holypost.com/events for details and to get your tickets before they're gone. That's holypost.com/events. Here is episode 691.
Hey there, welcome back to the HOLYPOST podcast. My name's Phil Vischer. I'm back. I was gone, but now I'm back. Like Gandalf, I'm now Phil the White.
I think you were pretty white before, Phil.
Oh.
I get that reference now.
I was Phil the Gray. Now I'm, okay, never mind. Caitlin Chess is also here.
Hi,
Caitlin.
I missed you.
Oh, I missed you too. I have to say, Sky Jitani's also here if you're... keeping score at
Sky the Brown.
Home. If you're setting up your bobbleheads or your action figures to act out our audio, Sky's also here. Mm-hmm. I have to say, I listened to the last 2 shows and they were really good. And it made me think, maybe they don't need me.
No, we do.
No,
Phil.
it was because Mike brings good energy and you guys are still you guys. And it was pretty good. I have to say it was pretty good.
No, but we need you.
We limped along.
No
Phil.
one did any accents.
I think yeah. When was the last time I did an accent that didn't make you cringe?
I say that I'm annoyed, but I really love it. But this isn't the opportunity to try.
So when Caitlin says she's annoyed with something that I do, it really means she loves it.
I don't know how universally applicable that is.
And now it's time for the theme song.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Sky, Phil, Caitlin, and the Holy Post. Sky, Phil, Caitlin, and the Holy Post.
And sometimes other people.
Today's episode is sponsored by Our Place. You're trying to eat healthy, right? Are you trying to cook healthy? I mean, is your cookware part of the problem? Most cookware still contains harmful forever chemicals, where a single scratch on a non-stick coated pan can release 9,000 particles of plastic into your food and into you. Our Place makes high-performance, toxin-free cookware. You can cook without worrying that the coating on your pan is going to end up in you. Plus, the cookware from Our Place is gorgeous. Great design, awesome colors. You've got to check it out. Our Place has a 4-piece cookware set that can overhaul your entire kitchen. The set includes 2 multifunction always pans and 2 perfect pots in mini and full sizes that replace a whole stack of cookware, and buying them together saves you $150. So stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/HOLYPOST and use code HOLYPOST for 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial and free shipping and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with 0 risk. This episode of the Holy Post is sponsored by Hiya Health. Hey, do you have kids? Do you care about their health? Of course you do. Most kids' vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk kids really shouldn't be eating. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin for kids. 0 sugar, 0 gummy junk, yet they taste great and are perfect for picky eaters. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diet diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you need to go to hiyahealth.com/holypost. This deal is not available on their regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/holypost and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. And thanks to Hiya Health for sponsoring this episode. Well, in the spirit of Caitlin loves what she says is annoying.
No.
You stepped right into this one.
I thought I was safe. I've been safe for so long.
Some people complained that how long it's been since we had a news of the
coming
butt.
for those
Now it's
people.
time for news of the butt.
And now it's time for news of the butt.
How human fingers may have evolved from ancient fish butts.
I cannot.
Did you see this story?
No.
It's fantastic. A recent study published in the journal Nature suggests that the DNA triggers responsible for controlling the development of digits, fingers and toes,
Oh my gosh.
trace their origins back to the fish cloaca.
Wow.
Cloaca.
We've done stories on this before.
Cloaca.
Really?
Yeah. Dinosaurs and fish
Oh yeah,
and
dinosaur.
birds.
Cloaca. Scientists have long hypothesized that the digits of land animals likely evolved from fins. That would make sense.
That does make sense.
Fins to digits?
Yeah.
Fins to hands?
Mermaids.
That's why fish are so bad at math.
Yeah.
Come again? Okay. The new study suggests instead that the birthplace of fingers lies not at the sides, but in the rear.
Stop. No.
Researchers compared the genomes of mice and zebrafish, the same regulatory landscape, genetically speaking, which influences the development of fingers, is present in fish despite their distinct lack of digits. When researchers used CRISPR, gene editing, to fiddle with those genes, don't you love it when
already
someone
know.
fiddles with your genes?
No.
Let's see what happens if we fiddle with this gene. Oh, wow. Now he has 12 ears. Didn't see that coming. To fiddle with those genes in zebrafish, they were expecting to see changes in their fins. Instead, they saw changes in their butts.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
What were these changes?
goodness. It doesn't
Don't
say.
ask that. No.
It doesn't say.
Good.
It doesn't
Thank
say.
goodness.
And they don't go much further into it than that.
No one wanted it to go.
So
further than that.
so the connection? The connection.
They
Then,
don't know. They don't know what the connection is other than that these genes that control digits in mammals, they thought would affect fins in fish, and instead they affect butts.
We weren't meant to know. Even this,
We
let
weren't
alone
meant
more
to
than
know.
this.
So,
No.
you know, if you've got kids whose fingers keep finding their way to their backsides.
No.
Yeah, Mike, can you?
He's got kids that age.
I'm glad to say that's not a problem.
Thank
so if
you.
if you could not,
Yeah, don't
plant
give
that
them
seed.
ideas.
I'm not going to name names, but one of my children
Yeah, if
found finger paint in their diaper
oh,
and got quite artistic in the crib.
No.
yeah, when you itch your butt, it's just your fingers wanting to go home. That's the bottom
Hell!
line.
There's an old saying: "Go to bed with itchy butt, wake up with smelly finger."
Yeah. Did they say that in your family?
No.
Was your Caitlin? This is important. I think we should cancel our other stories and just talk about this. Was your entire family as proper as you are?
Yes. It was me and a sister.
It's a military family.
Military
Wow.
family. There, we didn't.
Okay.
No, we had none
Okay.
of this. I haven't been around a lot of boys.
Well, we'll change that.
Oh.
We are changing that. Okay. That's enough. This has been the news of the butt.
This has been the news of the butt.
Tech billionaire Peter Thiel. He is an odd fellow. He's an odd fellow. He was largely responsible for our current vice president, being our current vice president. Gave 4 2-hour lectures. 4 2-hour lectures, invitation only, no media. Had to agree that it was entirely off the record. He's a technologist and a futurist. What do you think Caitlin, if you would say, hey, this billionaire futurist technologist is giving 4 lectures, what do you think they'd be about?
Technology.
Yeah, you might think that.
Yeah.
It was about the Antichrist. Peter Thiel, billionaire, tech guru, gave 4 2-hour private lectures on the topic of the Antichrist.
He's been talking about the Antichrist in other settings.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. He argued, and it was supposed to be off the record, but believe it or not, some people
Shocker.
made recordings
Shocker.
and brought the recordings out and played them for other people, including journalists. What kind of world is it that you can't keep secrets from journalists?
Oh my gosh.
He argued in the talks that those who propose limits on technology development not only hinder business, but also threaten to usher in the destruction of the United States and an era of global totalitarian rule. He said, in the 17th, 18th century, the Antichrist would have been a Dr. Strangelove, a scientist who did all this sort of evil, crazy science. In the 21st century, the Antichrist is a Luddite who wants to stop all science. It's someone like Greta Thunberg.
Wow.
Or Eliezer Yudkowsky, a prominent critic of the tech industry's approach to AI. The billionaire seems to place those who would critique or regulate tech developers into a religious good versus evil worldview where the future of all creation depends on giving innovators free rein.
Isn't he the guy behind Palantir? Speaking of another Lord of the Rings reference.
Yes.
Which is a military contractor for surveillance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Global surveillance.
Yeah. Like if you were
Nothing one world government about that.
Right. So he's arguing that people who want to regulate his business practices and inventions, they're the Antichrist. But the guy who's inventing AI and government surveillance of every human being on the earth, he's fine. No worries about the Antichrist there.
Yeah. Thiel argued that critiques of technology and calls for stricter regulation by Thunberg and others appear to echo biblical interpretations of an Antichrist who will win power by offering the world peace and safety from apocalyptic destruction. So if you say we need to regulate to save the environment or to save the world, our children from AI, you are in fact the Antichrist, and you're going to ruin the world in the name of saving it.
Mm.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like it's a terribly biblical view of what the Antichrist is.
Well, technically, in the New Testament, John says there are many antichrists.
Oh, some are Greta Thunberg, he writes.
This is a good example of, we've talked a lot about how people have a tendency to make Jesus in their own image. We also have a tendency to make the Antichrist in the image of our enemies.
Oh,
conveniently.
Yeah, because I was thinking that Trump was the Antichrist.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
You can find that on the
Oh,
internet.
you can find that on the internet. Thiel said he also talked against financial regulations. We don't like financial regulations.
Shocking.
Huh?
Yeah, right.
One of the richest men in the world is against financial regulations. I can't believe it.
Such rules were a sign that a singular world government has begun to emerge that could be taken over by an antichrist figure who could then use it to exert control over people. We had some guests in our studio and they just left. Goodbye, guests. It was nice to see you.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Okay. So financial regulation. Now that's something that I've heard from conservative Christians.
This is as old as the New Deal.
Yeah.
Since FDR, people have been saying government regulation of the economy is synonymous with communism, which is synonymous with atheism, which is synonymous with the Antichrist. And so it's been a regular trope for almost 100 years in this country that regulation of business is of the devil.
And is leading towards one world government.
Right.
Yeah, which has been going on since 100 years, since the League of Nations and then the UN. And it's
a very old idea.
And then you throw in some Jewish bankers and you got yourself a nice stew of conspiracy that leads to the Antichrist.
Right.
It always does.
What is the Antichrist?
Technically, linguistically,
yes,
it is
Antichrist.
Yes. Well, no, it is.
What is Antifa?
It is people or movements or systems which are antithetical to the Christian Messiah or antithetical to the kingdom of the Messiah. So to be against the Messiah or against the Christ is, again, a person or a system or a movement that is advocating ideas and beliefs and actions which are antithetical to the way of the kingdom of God.
But there is something more specific. Where do we get our modern take on the Antichrist?
What do you mean? Not from the Bible, you mean?
No, like what verses are we looking at when we, like, the Antichrist will come? Right? That's Revelation? No, not Revelation.
Caitlin's
Revelation.
pulling it up right now.
I pulled it up.
Help me, Caitlin.
I mean, there's a few references to Antichrist or Antichrist. The one that I think a lot of people go to in terms of constructing their eschatology is in 1 John 2. In verse 18, it says, "Dear children, this is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have come. This is how we know it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us." Interestingly, one is that, like, it's pretty explicit there that there's not a single Antichrist figure that we are awaiting.
So head wound, all that stuff. Where's that stuff?
That's Revelation.
Or Daniel. Yeah.
Or Daniel. But
Okay.
Revelation.
And who's that referring to?
Well, go ahead.
No, go for it.
You. No, please.
No, you.
No, you.
I mean, part of this gets into interpretive history of Revelation. Like, how much do you interpret each symbol as a specific person in history or kingdom or whatever? And how much are they representative of forces that have existed in every era? Like, many people argue John, the author of Revelation, is speaking in the context of the persecution of the church by the Roman Empire under Nero. Okay, so when he speaks of the city or the city with 7 hills, and that's Rome, because Rome had 7 hills. And then people will go, well, what does that mean for today? Is there a modern? Well, you could make the argument that in any era, there is a Rome, a kingdom that is persecuting the way of Jesus, just as in any era, there is an Antichrist. There is a figure that leads that effort, whether it's Nero in the 1st or 2nd century, or, pick your characters today, Greta Thunberg.
Caitlin, jump in.
A couple of things. One, the other place that seems to be more talking about a specific person, or at least one, is in 2 Thessalonians, where people point to that in relationship to Revelation in terms of there being an Antichrist who exalts himself above God. And then they pull that into the beast who had the wound that was miraculously healed in Revelation. To Skye's point, part of this is just how are you interpreting all of these eschatological passages? But the reference that I gave earlier in 1 John 2 and then in 2 John 7, there's a similar reference. All of those that talk about Antichrist as various people or even a posture, they're all in relationship to denying the divinity and humanity of Jesus Christ, which I think is relevant when we're talking about technology, but it's also just relevant to say we can put so much emphasis on a particular figure, as we've talked about before when it comes to Revelation, and discerning what role are nations playing, what role is this person playing. If you keep reading in the 1 John passage that I read before, it says, I do not write to you because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and because no lie comes from the truth. Who is the liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist, denying the Father and the Son. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also. Which is both like not as exciting and dramatic as the Revelation. We're looking for the world leader left behind series kind of mentality. Instead, it's in the church, there will be people who deny that Jesus is really God. They will deny the Trinity. They will deny the divinity of Christ. That is the person you need to be watching out for. And also, not only are various people this, but in this account and then in the 2 John account as well, it seems like it's both talking about people in the church, teachers in the church, and that seems like something that actually more of us can slip into that attitude than we might expect. We're looking for a powerful leader, a wealthy person, someone who's charismatic, someone who can do a lot of evil. The reality of a lot of the epistles writing about this is people can just go really wayward in their theology, and that's what you need to be looking out for.
Okay. So that sounds like they're describing Greta Thunberg.
I don't know what Greta Thunberg believes about Jesus.
Because she wants us to stop driving SUVs.
Also important that in the context of at least both of these, this is describing people who were in the church and left the church and never really had the truth of Jesus, which doesn't seem to describe a lot of the people we tend to put the label Antichrist on.
In the context that John is writing, it seems, and many scholars have written about this, that he's addressing the emerging Gnostic heresy within the church. And Gnosticism was this Greek philosophy that came into a lot of the early church. And it essentially said, the material world is inherently evil and only the immaterial, the spiritual, is good.
Right.
And therefore, Jesus could not have actually come in human form, because if he had a human body, well, human bodies are inherently evil. God would never unite himself with a human body. So there were people teaching that Jesus was not really human incarnate. And so he says in here, anybody who denies that Jesus has come in the flesh is the Antichrist. That's saying, watch out for this Gnostic heresy that's going around. It's denying the humanity of Jesus.
Okay.
You could argue narrowly that the Antichrist only refers to the heresy of Gnosticism. I think you could expand it to say those who deny the core teachings of the gospel are teaching something that is contrary or anti to the Christ, the Messiah. Therefore, be on guard in that.
Okay, so Peter Thiel says Antichrist is trying to regulate technology. Is he close? Is that like anywhere in there?
No.
Is that even, is it adjacent
Here's the thing.
to what the Bible teaches?
I'm not going to critique or endorse Thiel's viewpoint on technology or regulation or any of that sort of stuff, because I don't want to get into that. But this notion that in order to really emphasize how strongly I feel about something, I'm going to accuse those against me of being the Antichrist.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. Like, have your point of view, be persuasive, argue your arguments, but you don't have to invoke the language of Antichrist to scare people into agreeing with you. Like, there are bad things that happen in this world that aren't satanic, that we should still be against.
I do think it's ironic, and I'm not going to turn around and be like, actually, Peter Thiel is the Antichrist.
Right, yeah.
But it is interesting to Skye's point about Gnosticism and the reference I gave before about the end of 2 John, where it's more explicit about people who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh, have gone out into the world. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for, but you may be rewarded fully. And then later down, it even ironically at the end of the letter basically says, like, I have more that I could say, but I don't want to write it to you. I want to come to you in person because that's important so that our joy may be complete. Like, it is relevant to the conversation about technology that much of the New Testament references about the Antichrist are about the incarnation and Jesus being in the flesh. And then even in this reference, that seems to mean something for how Christians relate to one another, which is that being together in the flesh means something more than even the technology they had available to them at the time, which was writing a letter to someone else. That's not to say that anyone who creates technology or promotes technology is the Antichrist, but it is to say that it's ironic that something of the spirit of Antichrist as described in the New Testament has to do with denying the goodness of the material, and the goodness of that material is evidenced in the incarnation of Christ, which doesn't seem to be super relevant to what Thiel is saying.
So I should stop tweeting about this and go talk to someone in person?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Huh.
For you personally, Phil.
But a lot of segue, a lot of young males are attracted to this. Like in the tech industry, we're seeing more and more, it's becoming almost cool to be pro-Christian in parts of...
Pro-Christian,
not necessarily Christian.
Yeah, just pro. I really love when other people are Christians.
Yeah, because Elon Musk is pro-Christian.
Yeah.
He's not Christian. I guess Donald Trump is pro-Christian. He just complained a few days ago that he probably won't go to heaven, but he believes he's done some good. He said that.
I missed that.
Yeah, I missed that too.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Anyway, article in, where is this? New York Times. Why so many Gen Zers are drawn to conservative Christianity. By Daniel K. Williams. Has he been on the show?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not that I'm aware
I
of.
thought I recognized the name, but maybe
I like
that
him.
was a different. You like him? So you hang out?
No, I've read some of his work and I appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
He's done a lot on like the history of American evangelical political activity, especially abortion.
He's an associate professor of history at Ashland University. Where's that?
Where's that?
I have no idea.
I don't know where that is. Anyway, he says some stats first. About a third of Gen Zers are non-religious, but predictions that the Christian right would be moribund with Gen Zers. Don't you remember those predictions? That seemed so logical. Like, this is the end. It's all the old guys are dying. This is it for the far Christian right. Predictions that the Christian right would be moribund with Gen Zers have proven false. Amid the longing for purpose, community, and transcendence that many Gen Zers feel, a sizable minority of them have found their answer in conservative Christianity, fueling both a religious and a political revival among these young Americans. And we talked about this in terms of like the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. You know, how it was, this is the next generation turning back to Jesus. Because of Charlie Kirk. Gen Zers who go to church are more frequent attendees than churchgoers from older generations.
That's because the older ones can't get there anymore.
Not that old.
Oh.
Sky. 24% of Gen Zers go to church every week. What? 24% of Gen Zers go to church every week, a slightly higher rate than for millennials.
Are they is that count in person or just like digital church?
No, and I think
I do not know.
I think that probably is 24% of Gen Zers who are Christians go to church every week.
Well,
if that's the same
That's
Barnett
not what
report.
it says.
You can click on the
That
stat
might
there.
be-
Click on the
mistake.
stat there. Okay, you research
I'm
that.
gonna figure that out.
Or we can make Mike do it so we can keep talking. Many of these young Christians have turned to conservative politics. What? I hadn't noticed that. Gen Z Christians, though, don't seem to have a Reaganite confidence in the free market or a Sunbelt-influenced optimism. While the Christian right of the 1980s was largely led by Baptists, the Gen Z Christian right is much more likely to be charismatic. One study showed that approximately half of Gen Z and millennial churchgoers attend charismatic churches. That kind of shocked me.
Yeah.
What
It's
happened
the
to
fastest growing segment. It's also partly because of demographics and ethnicity, because Latino Christians are far more likely to be charismatic.
You're either Catholic or charismatic.
That's right,
For the most part. Charismatic and Pentecostal Christians have been particularly attracted to anti-institutional populism and to leaders who are strong and charismatic in the non-religious sense. For example, members of the Assemblies of God, which is, I think, the largest Pentecostal denomination, identify as Republicans at a higher rate than even Southern Baptists. Wow! That's not because they're just white conservatives. 44% of Assemblies of God members are Hispanic or non-white. And they have found in Mr. Trump a perfect match for their anti-institutional populism.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. When you look at popular Pentecostalism in America, or even charismatic television preachers, they share a lot of characteristics in common with not just Donald Trump, but with authoritarian leadership.
Hair, gold,
prosperity preaching,
fake tan.
And it's the problem with it is this stream of Christianity in particular is not very conducive to classical liberalism, meaning democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, pluralism, because it tends to be more driven by a fundamentalist outlook on things. It's very black and white and absolutist, and it tends to be very personality driven. There's a charismatic, dynamic leader at the top of everything, and you do what that person says because they're the conduit of God's word. And that isn't the kind of Christianity that developed free societies in the West.
True. Was that me? I'm sorry. I'll stop making beeps. Go away, beeps. Yes.
I think I was right. I don't want to fact check the New York Times.
Really?
But the survey data that they're basing this off of from Barna, everything about it is couched in terms of church-going millennials or church-going Gen Z.
So a higher percentage of church-going Gen Z.
Of all of the church-going people across the generations.
Go weekly.
Gen Z are going more frequently than the other generations.
Got it. It says charismatic and Pentecostal Christians might also be attracted to the language of spiritual warfare. Do you hear that much? Do you hear that much these days?
Can I plug a little preview here? I just on Friday had a conversation with N.T. Wright about spiritual warfare from Ephesians 6.
Why weren't we invited?
I know.
You should ask him about Peter Thiel.
Well, I already had the conversation.
I'm just saying he did a Veritas forum with Peter Thiel.
Did he really?
You should ask him
I didn't know that.
about it.
Well, it's gonna that's gonna be for a HOLYPOST Plus only. Folks are gonna get that kind. We have a future upcoming interview with N.T. Wright about Ephesians, but the part on spiritual warfare is for HOLYPOST Plus only.
Okay. Instead of trying to figure out who's the Antichrist by like what they believe, we should just develop a database of head wounds. So we can just keep and then feed it to Palantir.
I have a scar on the back of my head here.
Hey, you're on the database. We'll put you on the database.
All right.
I have been
Did you
worried.
survive?
Did I survive?
Yeah, your head wound?
Yeah. I did.
Well, that's
suspicious.
That's 2 check marks.
If only you had died.
With this view, the spiritual warfare view of politics as a battle between good and evil. They also appear to be stronger culture warriors than other evangelicals. Today's young Christian right voters may be less interested in specific matters of policy than in tribal identity. When the Republican Party abandoned its 40-year commitment to a national abortion ban last year, evangelical support for Mr. Trump remained as strong as ever.
Mm-hmm.
Political activism seems to be less about getting a specific policy outcome and more about electing the candidate who is believed to be on God's side. And in determining who is on God's side, what counts is not so much a candidate's faith or moral virtue, but rather the person's willingness to protect those seen as God's people.
Okay, can we back up for just a second here?
Yeah, back up for just a second.
Because there's two things here that I think are really important that you just read that we need to pause on for a second. One, even as recently as this weekend, I have heard people defending their support of Donald Trump and the Republican Party along the lines of because they're pro-life, because they're pro-life, because they're pro-life. And no one is acknowledging, thankfully this report does, but no one's acknowledging that the Republican Party is no longer pro-life, that they have removed that plank from the party platform. The number of abortions are going up. Even the overturning of Roe has not changed. It's, again, the number of abortions overall going up. The leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, is not for banning abortion. And so it's just so funny to me that everyone still cites that as the primary reason to support Trump and the Republican Party when that's no longer part of the party's platform. And just to make the point, second point, what we're seeing here is something I've talked a lot about, and I've done an explainer video on this, but we are seeing the rise of fundamentalism because as society becomes more and more complicated, as people are overwhelmed with all the chaos and craziness, everything from I don't know what the definition of a man and a woman is anymore, to the diverse pluralism of our society, to the religious diversity of our society. People are feeling overwhelmed by all of that, and they're looking for simplicity and answers, and that makes fundamentalism really, really attractive. So it shouldn't surprise us that a generation that the coddling of the American mind generation that doesn't have a lot of grit, that struggles with anxiety and depression and wants security and clear boundaries is drawn to the forms of Christianity. They're saying, here, we will give you all the answers so you don't have to worry and be anxious anymore. That's what's happening here.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you overgeneralizing an entire generation of people?
I am.
Are you being a grumpy old man?
A little bit, but I'm saying there's data to back this up.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Haidt has written numerous articles and books about this. Like, this generation is more anxious. The younger generation, Gen Z, are more anxious. They've been more coddled. They have less grit. They feel more threatened. And so when they hear a message of come to this form of faith because it will give you all the answers to life and let you know exactly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, it's a very appealing message.
Because it's a battle of good versus evil.
Right. Everything's black hat or white hat.
Don't you want to be good?
And you want an exciting role to play. Like some of this description of the kind of Christianity that is appealing to Gen Zers and younger fits not just a history, a certain strand of American evangelical history. It fits the like internet ethos of their generation, whether you're on the right, on the left, whether you're Christian, non-Christian. I was recently learning about a group within a Presbyterian denomination that I was a part of, and it's a really small, really conservative group. It's mostly really young men. And all of the rhetoric they're using and the images they're posting online are this very culture warrior, like take back the denomination for Jesus and all this stuff. And the more you look at it, the more you're like, these are just boys who have grown up on the internet and know how to articulate their concerns in that kind of direction. And I don't fault people for just picking up the water that they're swimming in and learning how to relate to other people that way. The problem is whether it's that internet culture or the politics culture of the 70s or whatever it is, the church really struggles to be an alternative to that or distinct from that. Instead, we tend to just kind of take in whatever the dominant cultural mood is. And right now, it's like being angry on the internet. So it's not surprising there's a strand of Christianity that'll fit with that.
It is not surprising. For many Gen Z conservative Christian political activists, politics is a means to create a society that will not only protect the rights of conservative Christians, but also allow conservative Christian values to flourish. But in today's political context, it's the last aim that has led at least some younger conservative Christians to question liberal democracy and religious pluralism altogether.
There you go.
And I'm seeing that in spades right now, particularly on Twitter, of have we made democracy an idol, Christians?
It's just the level of historical ignorance it takes to make that statement. Like, they don't realize that all of the human rights, all of the prosperity, everything that they have enjoyed that made their life possible is the result of thousands of years of human civilization and society, and the development of that to the point where we've gotten to a place of free democratic societies where you're allowed to think and express yourself and believe what you want and do all that. And they're saying, maybe the entire structure upon which my life is built is overrated. And we should just get rid of it to go back a couple hundred years to the wars of religion that existed before the Enlightenment. And
we need a Christian Caesar.
well, do this for me.
Yes?
Take at least a college level course in Western civilization.
Do I have to?
And then make the argument that you'd like to go back to the pre-Enlightenment form of life.
Oh, Caitlin has
Caitlin's
something
upset.
to say to you.
Well, I think what I see here is less, I mean, some of that is certainly true, Sky, but I also think there are really good, thorough arguments to be made about the failures of liberalism, about the failures of religious pluralism as we have conceived them, that a lot of people are especially Gen Zers on the internet, clearly feel like the options are either buying into the philosophical claims of liberalism and religious pluralism defined a certain way, or being in this kind of theocratic Christian nationalist, like dominate the world kind of mentality. And there were like decades where Christians made really thoughtful criticisms of liberalism as a political philosophy and a form of pluralism that said, leave your religious convictions at the door. Let's all pretend we all kind of believe the same things. And those were really good arguments. Like Patrick Deneen's Why Liberalism Failed, people forget, like Obama endorsed that book. Like it was a really thoughtful critique of not the kind of structure of liberalism, but the philosophy that undergirded it, that sort of made it sound like the way that humans best function is just by choosing all of their own goods.
Okay, hold on a second though. We're using the same word, liberalism, but I don't think we're using it the same way.
Well, I mean, I think the post-liberal philosophers were criticizing liberalism not as right-left liberalism.
I know, yeah.
But political liberalism.
Yeah, but when I use the word liberalism, I'm talking about this is what America's founders believed.
Yeah.
Right. They believed in the First Amendment.
Yeah. And
Right?
I think
The freedom of
they're
speech,
really
freedom of religion,
thoughtful
freedom of
Christian criticisms of the philosophy that undergirded that were made.
Right.
And I think a lot of them are really true.
Okay.
I think the problem is people were not given an option to say, this is the best structure we have for living in a very pluralistic world. We should support that structure. We don't have to support the kind of philosophy of what a good human life is that undergirded a lot of it, that came out of an Enlightenment era that really was in some ways deist and not very Christian, and discarded, I think, some of the most important parts of the Christian faith. But people have not given, the young college student that wants to fight with everyone and finds their people on the internet, they haven't been given an option to say the critiques that you feel, to your point earlier about the changing definition of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, this sense that the life I'm being offered of just choice and kind of consumerism is not the life that I want. But the option I'm not given is a thoughtful critique of that helps me build a full, flourishing life within a liberal democratic context. That's not available to them. The options are either a criticism of liberalism that says, let's topple this whole system and democracy doesn't work, or just all of this is good and you should just go with all the philosophy that undergirds it. And there's an alternative to that we just haven't given a lot of space to flourish.
I mean, I think the founders understood this. I know they did because they wrote about it. In order to have a liberal democratic society, it needs to be built on illiberal, undemocratic institutions.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you need families and you need churches and you need voluntary communities that are not democratic and that are not liberal, right? Churches where your virtues are formed and your beliefs are grounded and all that, and family systems that give you a sense of identity and belonging and care. When those structures are there, it allows you to then have a larger society in which people are free and they can express themselves, and there is allowances for diversity, and you can vote and have a democratic society. But what we've seen is the breakdown of those non-democratic, illiberal systems, family and religion in particular. And so then people go, well, the whole thing's falling apart. Yeah, no, duh. So the answer then is not to say, well, let's get rid of liberalism and democracy on the higher end. It's let's put back in place those underlying structures that are missing.
By forcing people to have them, by getting rid of liberal institutions
here's
on
what's
the
so
high
funny.
end.
post-liberal used to mean, within Christian theology, it used to refer to more of the Benedict option kind of way of post-liberal means we actually don't care that much about government institutions, civil institutions. We're more concerned with cultivating communities that are apart from that are vibrant, that have spaces for
We're going to be a little more
agency and
Amish.
community. We're going to be a little more Amish. I'm not saying I think that was the best way to do it, but that's what post-liberal used to mean. Now, when the New York Times says post-liberal, they mean Christian nationalists take over the government.
Right.
Both of those, I think, have a wrong view of how Christians should best relate to fallen but still possibly good institutions. He uses the word Manichaean in this article to describe everything is good versus evil.
I didn't
it's
read that
good.
part because I didn't know how to say it.
I was just glad that the New York Times had the word Manichaean in an article, but I think to that point that there's a Manichaean view of the world operating on both of those
Which is
senses
what?
of post-liberalism. Manichaeism was a philosophy that my favorite theologian Augustine confronted and wrote a lot about, that basically said rather than a good creator that creates good things and then something is corrupted in that good creation, Manichaeism believed there are two equally powerful but opposite forces in the world of good and evil.
It's Star Wars.
It's Star Wars, yes.
Okay.
So I think that does explain, like, this is why I will often tell people, whether it's the kind of post-liberal that says let's withdraw from politics entirely, or whether it's the kind of post-liberal that says let's take over politics, both tend to operate with a Manichaean sense of the world that says this institution, all good or all bad, which whether it's the church or the government, you can just be all good or all bad. Any policy is all good or all bad. There's only good guys and bad guys. And one of them just says, because we're the good guys and those are the bad guys, let's take over. The other says, because we're the good guys and those are the bad guys, let's get away from them. Neither acknowledge a properly historic Christian understanding of the world, which is fallen, but still the Holy Spirit is working, awaiting redemption, but still limited in what we can do. And so that approach to politics would say, let's do the best that we can. Let's have somewhat limited expectations for how much we can do, but let's also be hopeful that the Spirit is working in places we might not expect. But the alternative that most of, I think, the kinds of young Christians he's describing, I think don't feel like they have agency in the context they're in to change the world. But if they can kind of plug in to an online community that says you can be now part of the good guys that are going to fix things, it feels like you're doing something. It feels like you're on the right side. And that's really comforting. Whereas I think if we had churches that didn't feel the need to fit in one box or the other, but said, as I have said 1,000 times, like, here's a Sunday school class you can teach. Here's a community group you can get involved in.
We've got a generation of young men and women.
Mostly men, yeah.
That have grown up on Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Marvel movies.
Harry Potter.
And Harry Potter, where everything is a battle between the good guys and the bad guys. And the lines are clear and the morality is clear. And then they get interested in traditional religion and they're introduced to it by people that are political activists like Charlie Kirk. And you just go right into, I'm joining the good team so we can fight the evil team.
Okay, yes, but I think you're missing one critical component.
Yes, but.
First of all, there have always been morality tales throughout human history of clear good and bad. And there's a role for that. And
Manichaeism.
Right, but it also helps children understand basic dynamics of how. So I don't think it's our storytelling and narratives that have been the primary problem.
Okay.
I think the primary problem is when you have those stories and you don't have, going back to our original story about the Antichrist, you don't have incarnate community where you aren't living out and realizing that, you know what? People are really a mix of good and bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes really good people do bad things. And sometimes there are bad people who stumble into doing good things. And in incarnate community, you discover those nuances of relationship. When you don't have that, when you are isolated, when you've grown up looking at a screen your whole life, when you've not been part of a church community or a religious community, when you're isolated and you find groups online that only agree with what you do or the gaming community that you're a part of, you don't learn those nuances of human community. And so you perpetuate into adulthood this view that everyone wears a black hat or a white hat.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's that it isn't that these childish stories of good and evil are bad. It's that when we perpetuate them into adulthood without true maturity, and we look at politics and the world that way, this Manichaean view, it leads to really bad outcomes.
Okay. So what do we do, guys and girl? You're guys, she girl.
I'm skies.
Skies and girl.
Oh, gosh.
What do we do? This is my concern. Because you say, wow, a lot of people are finding a new interest in Jesus, the person of Jesus. But the people that are telling them to love Jesus are also telling them to hate immigrants. and to oppose, acceptance of LGBTQ people. And that if you love Jesus, you're opposed to government intervention. So there's this huge, Jesus is coming with so much, I won't say unbiblical baggage. In some cases, it's unbiblical. In some cases, it's just extra biblical.
It's a package deal.
Yeah, the Bible does not take a position on the size of a federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what do you do when so many people are being attracted with both the gospel and a set of political priorities that are sometimes in contradiction to the gospel?
Well, it's funny you ask because we just posted a sermon of mine today on HOLYPOST Plus.
Did we?
We did. It's one I gave just a few weeks ago out at New Song, California, and it's about how do we understand when Jesus is asked the question by the expert in the law, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus doesn't respond with one commandment. He responds with two. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the whole sermon is about how we shouldn't understand those two commands sequentially, but simultaneously. So it isn't you love God, and once you got that all figured out, then you love your neighbor. It's the way you love God is by loving your neighbor. And I get into the whole history of how that plays out in the Old Testament, the New Testament, things like that. And I think that's sort of an antidote to what you're talking about, because what a lot of these messages say that these young people are attracted to is you need to love God. You need to devote yourself to God. And because you love God, here are the people you need to hate. Here are the neighbors you need to be against. Here are the people that are, because they are against God and you're for God, you need to be for God and you need to be against them. And that pitting one part of the greatest commandment against the other is a sure sign that you are in a church of false teaching. And so I think the way you combat that bundling of all these politics and all this culture war stuff into the gospel is remind people that if the message you've believed requires you to hate people, it's not the way of Jesus.
Okay.
Which goes back to the incarnation thing, too. I mean, there's a Manichaeism at play there, too, that says there's God that's good, and then creation is in the bucket of bad. And that's the opposite evil force, as opposed to God, the good creator, made a good creation that has been corrupted and twisted by the fall, but is still good. And especially those made in God's image are good. And the threat or the way that Manichaeism can kind of worm its way into a lot of forms of Christianity, just like the Gnosticism we were talking about before, is not just in terms of explicitly what you say you believe, but in how you live it out and act it out. And a lot of us are operating with some Gnosticism, and a lot of us are operating with some Manichaeism, and we're not confronted with it in part because of what you said, Skye, of just we can give all the right answers, which even that's a little questionable, but we can give all the right answers on a test of our theology. Do you believe that humans, are made in God's image? Or do you believe that creation is bad and God is good? We could maybe answer those questions correctly, but because we're not in embodied community with people, serving people, it doesn't make its way down to our heart. It's just information. And to the point we've made 1,000 times, if you're consuming tons of political media that tell you that might be true under other circumstances, but in this moment the stakes are too high, the risk is too existential, you'll find ways to justify acting differently than you think you should otherwise.
That's exactly a point I made in this message. It's if your response to the gospel is cognitive agreement with a bunch of ideas, that does not make you a Christian.
Yeah.
The biblical understanding of belief is embodied allegiance. It's what we actually do that shows.
That sounds harder.
It is harder.
It sounds harder too.
Yeah.
I don't. You could attract more people with easier.
That's how that works.
That's what's happened.
Jesus talked about the roads being wide and narrow because one's a lot easier.
All right. I want to thank Barb, our friend Barb. She's from Switzerland, although she lives in Wyoming now. She wrote us a letter and we read it on the air. And I mentioned that since she's Swiss, I would love some Swiss chocolate. And so she went back to Switzerland just to get me some chocolate.
Wow.
And she sent it to us, and I have some Swiss chocolate from Barb, and I really appreciate that, Barb. Thank you very much. Now, then your next mission is to bring me one of those giant Alp horns, those big, huge, giant. So go get one of those.
Wow. You are demanding.
There are other things in Switzerland.
Barb enjoys it. Barb enjoys this. She loves a challenge.
Okay.
They're like 10 feet long, and you have to put them on the side of a hill, and then you go up to the little end and you go, and you blow really hard.
You've been to Switzerland. Have you done that?
No. I've mostly been in the airports of Switzerland.
Which are also nice.
Hey, everybody, we got a great guest. Stick around for it. Thanks for supporting us. Go to HOLYPOST.com. Check out HOLYPOST Plus. Lots of new stuff. Is your sermon that they all want to listen to now, is that up for everybody just on HOLYPOST.com?
It's on HOLYPOST Plus.
Oh. Well, you got to see. That's the stuff you're missing out on if you're not helping us fund more good stuff like Sky's sermons. Okay.
Also, if they want to see all three of you and Esau in person, they can buy their tickets at holypost.com/events for our October 25th live show.
What?
October 25th live show.
Should we wear Halloween costumes?
Maybe.
Is it going to be?
in.
Is it going to be like a circus? Are we going to do acts?
Think bigger and better.
We should have animals too.
I can juggle.
Children?
No, children.
I can juggle.
Oh, which children would love that.
Children would love that. Okay, so there you go. All the information you ever could have wanted, and a new news of the butt, which I'm sure you were all excited about, and now want to share with all your friends.
Okay.
Watch out for your fingers. Okay, see you next week. The Holy Post is supported by Rocket Money. There are people in the world who need our help, and financial support is one way we can help them. But it's hard to help if you have no money left at the end of the month. Where did it all go? No idea. I've used a couple different apps to help track my spending, but none of them has been as easy for me as Rocket Money. Is it a rocket full of money? No. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Their dashboard lays out your total financial picture, including bill due dates and paydays, in a way that's easy to digest. Rocket Money has saved users more than $2.5 billion, including over $880 million in canceled subscriptions alone. Their 8 million members save up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. It's simple, it's easy, and it just works. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/holypost today. That's rocketmoney.com/holypost. rocketmoney.com/holypost. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and boy, I'm a little worried about the world's mental health. Wouldn't it be great to find someone who can help you on your own journey to better mental health? BetterHelp therapists have helped more than 5 million people worldwide. I like the fact that you can request a Christian therapist, and that you can change therapists at any time until you find the person just right for you. Lisa and I have really benefited from working with a Christian therapist from time to time, and I know you will too. The right therapist can make a huge difference, and BetterHelp has been matching people with the right therapist for 12 years. This World Mental Health Day, we're celebrating the therapists who've helped millions of people take a step forward. If you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. Holy Post listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/holypost. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/holypost. Holy Post is supported by Credible Witness. Tired of hot takes? Credible Witness is a podcast that spotlights grounded people, pastors, scholars, and practitioners whose lives make the gospel believable. Hosted by Nikki Toyama Zito, each episode shares a personal, lived story of Christian faithfulness. Guests include leaders you know like Jamar Tisby, Walter Kim, Tara Beth Leach, Brianna Parker, and Mark Laberton. Hear from host Nikki Toyama Zito herself.
I'm Nikki Toyamasito, and this is Credible Witness, a collection of stories and wisdom from faithful people wrestling with and bearing witness to the credibility of Christian life today. Each episode is an invitation to listen generously and courageously to one person, navigating social tension and moral complexity. And every voice reminds us that the church is called to be a credible witness to Christ, a living reality of hope, justice, truth, and love.
John F. Kennedy once said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." For almost 250 years, with the important exception of the Civil War, the American political system has made peaceful change possible. We've had a system, although imperfect, that has allowed for those who want change to express themselves, to organize, to speak up, and to peacefully protest. They've also created campaigns and elected candidates. They've passed laws and even amended the Constitution, all without violence. But what happens when more and more Americans no longer believe in that system? when they no longer think that we can bring change the way we have in the past? Well, what happens is you get nearly half of young adults now believing that violence may be necessary and justified to bring about change. Shockingly, that's what's going on right now. And when you combine it with the rising mental health crisis, a loneliness epidemic, social media algorithms, and dehumanizing rhetoric from our politicians, it's actually shocking that we're not seeing more political violence. That's the scary assessment of my guest today. Elizabeth Neumann is a former U.S. Homeland Security official who served in counter-terrorism leadership under both the Bush and Trump administrations. She's now a national security expert and the author of Kingdom of Rage, The Rise of Christian Extremism and the Path Back to Peace. She was on episode 621 to talk about her book, and I've invited her back today to talk about the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination and what she's seen in the second Trump administration. Here is my conversation with Elizabeth Neumann.
Elizabeth Neumann, welcome back to the Holy Post.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be with you guys.
Delighted to have you back. You were on, I don't know when, to talk about your book, Kingdom of Rage, and then you and I did a Holy Post event together near Denver some time ago.
We did.
I wish I was inviting you back on the show under better circumstances, like to talk about how all the trend lines are pointing in a better direction for American society and violence and extremism, but it doesn't seem to be going that way. Let me start with what everyone's talked about for the last month, and that was the horrible assassination of Charlie Kirk. After the initial shock of that event, where did your mind go as a counterterrorism expert, as somebody who has been talking about the dangers of violent extremism? Where did your mind go once it kind of settled down from the initial shock of that event?
So my location is actually maybe the most interesting, sad part of the story. I was at Ground Zero. There's a conference of counterterrorism professionals that meets every year next to Ground Zero at the Perelman Center. And we are talking about the state of counterterrorism and political violence. And I'm about to go on stage when the texts start coming in. And I'm doing a panel with other people. And our panel happens to be the topic of far right, far left violence. We're supposed to be providing our expert opinions on the state of play. And meanwhile, at the time he had not passed, but it didn't look good, right? And you're looking at the stories, the news coming in, and you're like, this isn't. He's not going to be okay. And so we went on stage and acknowledged it because everybody in the audience had their phones. They had seen this too, and so it was like the elephant in the room that we're having this slightly academic conversation about the state of things. Meanwhile, this horrific event was unfolding, and also. Right before I went on stage, I leaned over to a colleague that I've known for 10 years and was like, oh my gosh, this is just about to get so much worse. And it's hard to be the prognosticator. We often get you get called by reporters, or you go and speak and you get asked for, put this into context for us. And what does this mean? And for 5 years, really since 2019, my field have been sounding the alarm. Like, we're not okay. The violence is increasing. The trend lines are up and really up. And initially it was from this side, and then it was, a few different types of ideological motivations. And now it's just everybody. And people without any ideological motivations, like you can't even categorize them. They're just... the new term that we've been using in the field is nihilist violent extremists, people who have given up hope and there is no point to life and let's just burn it all down. And we've actually seen quite a few of those types of attacks in the last 2 years. And so it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, this is like what we've been fearing and now it's coming to fruition, and now it's going to get worse from here. And I don't know when we snap back. Snapback's kind of a weird term, but if you look through history, there's this moment where it just kind of starts to die down. But it's usually not because of some big event. It's just like all of the anger is finally, we've run out of it, and we just kind of start to move back to normalcy. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that yet.
Well, it sounds like you're describing a child having a tantrum.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of burn out and they can't keep it up, and they calm down. We'll get into what may be coming down the pike in the future in a little bit. Going back to the aftermath of the assassination, immediately the media starts speculating about the ideology of the shooter, political affiliation, motivation, which team is he on, so that hopefully we can blame the other team for this horrific event. I think we all know that's probably not helpful. Why, from your point of view, is that particularly not helpful? And why is that not a solution to just identify somebody's politics or motivation to explain these things?
There's two reasons why it's not helpful. Ideology, I can identify somebody's ideology. That doesn't help me prevent an act of violence. Preventing acts of violence is based on understanding behaviors of somebody on a pathway to violence. And the pathway to violence is ideologically neutral. So if you over-focus on ideology, then you're going to miss the actual behaviors that would say, oh, well, that's the person that we need to be most concerned about. Ideology
can I pause you there for a second, though? But aren't there some ideologies that actively call for violence?
Sure. A lot of ideologies do. But what we know about people that hold extremist beliefs, and the definition I'm using of extremism, that you get extremist when you've decided that violence is your only course of action. So it's not just that you have a belief that's outside of the mainstream, or that you don't like somebody or some other group. It's that you have gotten to a place in your belief system that the only solution you have is some form of hostile action. Hostile action can be on the lower side of the spectrum that doesn't involve violence. I should clarify that that's actually one of our biggest problems right now, is we have a whole lot of people that participate on the lower end of the hostile action spectrum. That's bullying, threats, intimidation, harassment. Then you move into maybe criminal space where you're committing property crime, hate crimes, then terrorism, then genocide is the upper end of that spectrum. Most people never advance to an act of violence, but they hold an extremist belief, and they will say that it is totally justified to commit violence. The problem we have in the country at this moment is we have a really large percentage of the public that is open to violence as a solution. Most of them are not going to go commit an act of violence. But what we know, studied from around the world, anytime you get a society with a sizable proportion of the population that thinks violence is an okay answer, you do end up with more attacks. You do end up with more violence. So part of the trick of reducing violence is actually reducing those holding the belief that violence is justified. Polls range from like 15% to 36%, 40% over the last 4 years. I've been tracking a UC Davis poll that polls annually, and it's been pretty steady at 26%. So somewhere in the realm of 65 million people in this country, adults, believe violence is okay because we need to achieve some sort of political agenda. And that's just way too many people.
Okay, two things on that. There was another poll I saw from the FIRE Foundation, the Foundation for Independent Free Exercise Speech, something, I forget what their acronym is.
They defend the First Amendment.
Yes, they defend the First Amendment. And they do a poll asking college students every year, I don't have it in front of me, but something along the lines of, is it justifiable to use violence to shut down speech you believe to be harmful? And I think it was 45% of college students.
It's insanely high.
It's insanely high. And it's
really troubling.
And it's been going up, which makes me wonder whether it's that poll or the others that you've seen. Is this an increasing point of view for the younger generation? Or is it across the board? You're seeing it in older Americans, middle-aged, and young people.
We are seeing it across the board go up, but it's definitely disproportionately higher among youth. Young adults, I suppose they are of adult age. And there was some really interesting research that was done by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff, who is the head of FIRE. And it went into their book from 2017 around Coddling the American Mind is the name of that book. And they actually were exploring the idea that Gen Z has bought into this myth that what doesn't kill me makes me weaker, and that if you're not with me, then you're like, if you don't fully agree with what I agree with, then you are evil. Like, it's a very us-them context.
Right.
And there was one other myth, and the point of this is that it is fundamentally different than millennials, Gen X, baby boomers. Like, they have this way of viewing the world that that is not how we grew up. And so one of the big shifts is a Gen Z mindset is much more open to the idea that somebody that disagrees with me is an existential threat. The rest of us grew up in a value system of agree to disagree, that rabid debate is actually a healthy sign of a good democracy. But that is not the value system that Gen Z seems to have adopted. And so I actually wrote about this in my book about when I read this research, it all of a sudden clicks why we're starting to see more violence, because those are the necessary precursors to get to a place where violence is justified. So now that we actually are seeing some of these newer polls that say, yeah, Gen Z says violence is justified. I'm like, yeah, because they're underlying ways in which they view people different than them. It is like the precursor parts of the extremist definition.
I concur with what you're saying, but it seems so paradoxical, because part of the argument that Lukianoff and Haidt are making in that book, The Coddling of the American Mind, is that so many young people have grown up in environments of extreme coddling, of total safety and protection. They weren't allowed to struggle. They weren't exposed to difficult things. They have that snowplow parent kind of thing where all the obstacles are cleared for them. So ironically, you have a generation that has grown up more comfortable than arguably any previous American generation, and yet they're the most likely to say violence is okay. Yeah. And you would think it's a generation that grew up experiencing real hardship that would be more likely to be aggressive and violent, but it's actually the generation that grew up experiencing the least hardship, psychological or physical, that is arguing for the justification of violence.
Yeah, they were protected out of training their brains that they can actually deal with hard things and hard people and hard relationships. And so in coddling, and then certainly since then, they've done a number of studies looking at how the brains of children who have been raised on smartphones and tablets, if you compare that 5-year-old brain to a 5-year-old from 1985, or you compare the adolescent brain to an adolescent brain of 1985, they look different. They are wired differently. And some of that is the instant gratification that we get from our phones. Some of that is also what they talk about as a culture of safetyism, where we're keeping our kids at home. We don't let them play outside because we got scared that they were going to get kidnapped or bad people. And so we keep them at home and they don't play with other kids in real life. And that even at a young age, that at age 2, age 3, age 4, they're not interacting as much with other kids as they used to. We also don't have as many kids in our families, right? Like my granddad had 10 siblings. I had 1. And so you don't have that peer rubbing against each other and having to solve conflict. Instead, we parents step in and we organize sports at age 4. And so they're not doing free play. They're following an adult's instruction. And when Johnny doesn't throw me the ball the way I want him to throw it, I can go to my coach and my coach can fix it, as opposed to me trying to fix it. And so all of that has changed the way their brains work. I'm not saying this to beat up on Gen Z. It is rather really important to understand they literally are wired differently than the rest of us. And that there probably are some strengths to that. But one of the challenges for them is they actually don't have the built-in capability to handle the difficulties of life. Because they've been coddled. I mean, that's kind of the point of their book. The coddling has done damage.
We had Jonathan Haidt on the show some time ago and talked about a lot of this stuff, not in the context of political violence, but you can see the connections clearly. Okay, one of the patterns that we're seeing here in a number of these events is they tend to be young white men who are perpetrating this stuff. I know we've had conversations in the past where you talked about the data showing that most threats of political violence, or maybe even cases of political violence, are coming from the political right. But you had expressed to me in a previous conversation that you're seeing an uptick in the data of threats coming from the political left.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing, what does it look like now? Is that still the case? Is it changed? Is it a particular danger or attraction to young white men, regardless of their political, where they are in the spectrum, that we should be most concerned about?
Yeah, so the short answer is that thing we were watching for the last 2 years in my field, we're now, okay, it's here. Political left is very active on that hostile action spectrum. I'm not talking about peaceful protests. I am talking about we are seeing individuals that are crossing that line to the bullying, the threats, the harassment, the intimidation, the property crime, and actual crimes of violence. The field had been noticing shifts in tactics and shifts in conversation, mostly starting in 2020, and it's definitely in the last year picked up quite significantly. There is one study that was released a couple of weeks ago by CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Yeah, I always get their acronym wrong, but CSIS, and they made some headlines because they said, based on our count, the way that we slice the data, this is the first year that we have more far left attacks than far right attacks. So that is rather significant because if you were to take the past 35 years of data, there is no comparison in terms of the numbers of people killed, the numbers of attacks, plots, arrests. It is predominantly by like high percentage. We're talking like 70, 80%, the far right compared to the far left. So to see it outnumber far right in a year is eye-opening and jaw-dropping.
Is that a reflection of just political realities on the ground, that the Republicans, the MAGA movement on the right, controls Congress, controls the White House, controls, you could argue Republicans control the Supreme Court, that the left is just out of power? So the people on the left who are inclined towards extreme behavior are expressing that because they don't have legitimate outlets to express political preference or power?
Yes, and so you could argue that there have been other points in history in the past 50 years when Republicans have had control of all of those things, and we didn't see this.
Right.
So it's not just that you're out of power; it's that you're feeling threatened, and that the way that you motivate people to cross that threshold into hostile action is that you're facing what you perceive to be as some sort of threat to your success or survival. And I think one of the things that's hard about the moment that we're living in is that while violence is never justified, the threats that people are perceiving are coming from the government, right? So it's the government is threatening my nonprofit organization. The government is threatening to come after those who protest ICE. The government sent Black Hawk helicopters and rappelled down and arrested U.S. citizen children and left them naked on the side of the road last week. The government is abusing its power. And the courts are telling the government, you are abusing your power. However, the harm happened. And the recourse in our system is, yes, we can get the courts to say you shouldn't have done that, but it doesn't change the fact that there was a kid who sat naked on the side of the road, zip-tied for hours while they sorted through whether they were legal or not. And so there's harm there, and there are people that are scared because of that harm. And so when you add, there's like a real abuse of power occurring at the hands of our government, and I'm scared it's coming for me, you can see how people might get to the conclusion that I've got to protect myself, or maybe I need to do more. And so it's hard to have this conversation because I want to encourage all of those who are scared, especially if you're a believer, that we have models for how we deal with authorities that are abusive. The New Testament was written during a period of governments being abusive and abusing their citizens, and it led to persecution of the church. And I don't see anywhere where Paul takes up his sword. In fact, Christ said to put it away. So but that's hard. That's hard in the moment when people are really, really scared. So I can explain it rationally and also empathize that people are scared. And for some people, that's why they're resorting to thinking that violence is necessary.
Okay, Elizabeth, you just did something that I think was kind of revealing. Obviously, I totally agree with you as a follower of Jesus on your encouragement from the New Testament and the way we respond to government abuse, persecution, violence, whatever it might be. It's interesting to me that you went to the New Testament first rather than the Constitution, rather than the established political and legal structures of this country to say, we have protections against abuse of power. We have checks and balances. We have a 250-year history of the peaceful transition of power and balancing of rights and expansion of human rights and civil rights and legal rights and all these different things in this country. You just bypassed all of that to go to the New Testament. And again, I'm with you on that. But is that revealing you're not super confident that the American form of government or our legal system is going to get us out of this?
I do think that the courts are holding, and I have a lot of confidence there. What is not working, Congress is not doing any of its job right now. I mean, in fact, the government shut down right now because Congress is not doing its basic pass the budget job. But also they're not holding the executive branch accountable, and they're letting the executive branch do whatever it wants. What I'm trying to be empathetic towards is that it's at a macro level, I do think the courts will hold violence is not necessary here. At a micro level, that was somebody's kid that was left on the side of the road. And waiting for the courts to slap somebody on the hand, say, ICE, you overstepped your bounds, or like, here's your settlement, here's your $1 million payout for this abusive authority, doesn't change the fact that that kid is going to have that memory. And experience that abuse. Abrego Garcia spent months in an El Salvadorian prison and experienced a tremendous torture. Now, he probably has legitimate claims to bring in civil court against the U.S. government and probably will win. And he'll get him some money, but you can't change the torture that he endured. So there's this in-between space where some people are going to experience injustice, and the court's remedy for that injustice is slow, right, and maybe insufficient. And so that's where I'm kind of leaning into our faith. Like there is an answer here. It's hard to swallow the idea of I need to be prepared. If, for example, anybody's feeling called to go exercise their First Amendment right, and you feel like that's what God's calling you to do, you might face the government abusing you in some way, arresting you unlawfully, or putting your name on a list. These are things they should not do. It is unconstitutional. It's unlawful. And we have evidence that they're doing it right now. And so we need to count the cost. And the way we deal with it is not by getting so angry that we commit an act of violence, but leaning into Jesus. And I think the civil rights movement is a good place for us to look in a recent history of how you maintain and persevere against an abusive set of authorities, and you don't have to resort to violence to effectuate change eventually, but it takes time. This is not for the weak at heart.
Yeah, I agree. And the civil rights movement is an exemplar in this, but it was deeply rooted in the spiritual foundations of the gospel and led by Christian leaders. And even those in the movement who may not have been deeply committed to the gospel themselves were nonetheless shaped by the values of the gospel by those who led the movement. And it's concerning that we don't necessarily see that in a lot of what's happening in our country right now. But it sounds like your concern is the government's abuse of power, the administration's abuse of power might set off a cycle of retribution where then either in mass protests, which turn into riots, or individual violent actors, there's retaliation and we're off to the races. And how do we break that cycle? Before we run out of time.
Skye, Can I just add one more piece to this? We're also dealing with that post-COVID effect where we have a lot of very unhealthy people. And so in this mix of political violence, we also have individuals that are committing acts of violence that are not on a binary left-right. They've given up hope. The system has failed them, and they're just going to go out in a blaze of glory. The first Trump assassination attempt, the attacker is deceased, but that's how we categorize him. He wasn't there because he was pro-Biden and anti-Trump. He was trying to disrupt the system.
Right.
And so there's multiple vectors that are coming into play with this environment.
I know on some level I should try to encourage our audience right now, but it does feel like a perfect storm, because whether it's coming out of COVID or just the reality of the epidemic of loneliness and isolation that so many, especially young people, are facing. They're online too much. They're malformed by social media algorithms, all of that, and the rising mental health crisis we're having in this country. That alone is bad enough, but then you combine it with what's happening politically, with the polarization, the abuse of power, the rhetoric coming from our political leaders about hating their opponents, and the distrust of legitimate forms of political expression and change being effective. You combine all that together and you can understand why you're seeing more lone actors, or maybe even organized actors, resort to violence or viewing it as a legitimate form of expression. Before we wrap up, as you look ahead, what are the flags, yellow or red, that you're looking at to indicate, things are turning even worse? And is there anything you're looking to say, hey, this might be an indication, if we see this or this happen, that maybe we've turned that corner and we're heading in the right direction?
To head in the right direction is an interesting question. I would probably err on the side of being conservative and want to see multiple years of data of violence dropping before I sound, optimistic that we've turned the corner. Certainly, if somehow you could wave a magic wand and we could convince the American public to get to not be on social media as much as they are, especially our kids, and if we could get politicians to stop dehumanizing their opponents, that would go a long way. I don't have hope that our current politician set is going to do that, and that's why I spend more of my time focused on the long term, because the politicians we have today are a reflection of who we the people are. And so if we don't like that cohort right now, we don't like their behavior, then we need to go back to the basics and remember that it's we the people that get to choose who our leaders are. And so that's
to a degree.
There's a long, to a degree, but there's a long game here of institutional reforms and education of the electorate on their responsibilities with their vote.
I agree. I mean, the long-term game part of it is civic education, so people understand their role in the government. I think what Jonathan Haidt is trying to do throughout the country in getting kids off of smartphones and banning them from school,
be amazing.
Reforming the big tech companies to actually take civic responsibility for the products they're producing and the algorithms and what they are doing to our communities. But then there is need for political reform, because yes, there's that old statement, the people get the government that they deserve. But you can make an argument that our political system, with its gerrymandering and its primary systems and the breakdown of parties, most Americans did not choose the two candidates that ended up running for the presidency in 2024. Most of us were not satisfied with those options because the system wasn't designed to actually produce the candidates that most Americans wanted. And yeah, I don't want to just pass the buck, but our system is perfectly designed to produce the results we are seeing. And I think, yes, there's something about our national character that needs to be looked at, but I think there's something systemic that might need to be reformed as well.
I do think this is an interesting opportunity coming up to the 250th anniversary for, some of that civic education you referenced, but also, is this the democracy you want? Okay, if no, then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Because we actually, you're right, the system is stacked against the people. The parties actually have way less power than they used to, but they still have tremendous power. But I do think something of the moment that we're living in is what David Brooks calls we're in a period of disruption. And before you get to, and this is his theory, and then a couple of other authors that he cites studying the history of revolutions and disruptions. Before you get to the institutional reform, you have to get to the cultural reform.
Yeah.
And so we're in the disruption. I think, Sky, you and I, our generation, I think we're mostly going to be working on the cultural reform because I think that's going to take a while. And then maybe my kids get to work on the institutional reform because it's needed. But the pattern, at least, of democracies and of spaces that have actually come out of this horrible moment that we're in, you don't actually see the system get fixed right away, but you do see cultural reform efforts gain momentum and lead to that institutional reform. So that's I'm thinking long term here. I think this is, I want the violence to come down, don't get me wrong, and I do hope that tide turns quickly. We do see that in history. But if you're talking about the underlying reasons why we have this violence, I think that's a longer term set of work that we have in front of us.
Well, I actually find some comfort in your desire to think long term, because to think long term means you have hope. And we should. That's a good word to end on. Elizabeth Neumann, thank you for speaking into this moment, giving us some perspective. And I hope to have you back on to talk about better things. But
something happy, please.
Yes, something happy. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, if you like the video, like and subscribe so you can see more and other people can too.